Good afternoon, everyone. Today we're asking how scheduling impacts profits in your maintenance and service business. I'm joined by Graham Potts, who has a background in industry and has had his own businesses. So he's a great person to help owners in the Southwest. We'll take questions live on LinkedIn today, so pop them in the comments and we'll pick them up as we go along. Graham, today I know we're focusing on service and maintenance businesses. Can you give me an example of the kind of organisations that we're talking about?
Yes, I can, Linda. And welcome everybody. Service and maintenance business. I think a lot of people just think of maybe what they're used to. So, like for instance, maybe something like what can we say, a site engineer or inspectors, or sort of like a facilities management where you can have so many different services, HVAC, which is heating, ventilation, air conditioning. You could have electrical, plumbing, lifting equipment, cleaning, scaffolding, CCTV, security, blah, 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 it goes on. But there's also motor like garages. That's a service engineer, service maintenance business. And also, I would say it's also like service is like sort of professional services. So it could be, sort of accountants, solicitors as well, or, training providers.
Yeah. Okay. So quite a breadth there. I'm interested to hear what kind of problems you've come across in those service and maintenance businesses, Graham.
Well, a lot, every business has lots of problems. I think these businesses, it's really how you schedule your labor.
Yep.
Is the key one. I would say it labor because it could, like I said, could be technicians, engineers, accountants, but your labor, mechanics, but it's your labor. How do you schedule that? Because we all know that you have a finite resource of labor, but also customers' demands can change, and you don't always know what work's coming up and when it's coming up, and you get surprises. So it's really, mainly it's the scheduling the labor, I'd say, and it's actually doing it so that you do it as efficiently as possible. Now, also, you can have other things that can with these businesses. Let's talk about things like, if you're not on site, you're going to their sites, so you can have vehicles. You've got the equipment, like for garages or for, sort of if you're going mobile breakdown or whatever, and you've got parts. So all these things can, if you haven't got the right equipment, tools, resources, labor to do the job, they all, can cause problems. Yeah. Now, the other one, and I'm going to tell you, I'm not saying where because it's not fair, but another one is clear communication with customers. And, customers' expectations are massive. We're all the same. But clear communication, if you talk to your customer, that is, giving them updates where you are. And I've suffered this last week because my car was in the garage and I was meant to pick it up, go back and pick it up in the afternoon. And I had to chase and I had to chase and I had to chase and no one was there. And eventually they came back at 5:30 to say, yes, your car won't be ready. We got to do this. We haven't had time. My attitude now was totally anger. Yeah. Now, if they had rung me up a couple hours earlier when they knew there was a problem and said, look, sorry, this has happened. You can, bring it, but we can do part of the work now and you can bring it back, or we'll do it first thing in the morning. Fine. And guess what? On the Friday morning, same thing happened. They were meant to do it in the morning, didn't happen. So I had to cancel meetings in the afternoon. Yeah. And I think this is what people don't realize. It's just a courtesy call. Yeah. Just to let people know. So just make sure you keep your customer informed is key.
And as you say, you understand that sometimes issues are picked up or things don't quite work out the way, even if it's an issue on their side, you understand these things happen, but the communication is so
exactly key. And then you get things like, and that was the wrong part. So managing your inventory, making that and also making sure that, if you've got the basic, parts there, especially if you go out on a van. But in garages, I don't know how many people know this, but they tend to, have like 4 or 5, sort of deliveries a day. Some it's, but it's you've got to get the time. It's on an, sort of an hour basis. Yeah. But the more you can manage all these things and manage your customers' expectations, the better you'll find it. You'll get the right balance. And the other thing is obviously pricing, because at the moment, sort of like, where do you stick it? Because obviously, I would go into recession when it looks like not now, but can you put your prices up? Where are you on the pricing against others? And looking at different types of service you've got at different price levels.
Yeah, absolutely. So thinking on the scheduling side of things, how can that affect profits in those businesses?
Well, like I said, I see the biggest issue being labour.
Yeah.
So you need effective scheduling so that you utilise your labour for their full potential. You don't want them standing around. So you need to minimise the downtime. So that may mean that they've got the other bits to do the job. You've got enough work coming through, but it's not too much work, because sort of then you're going to let the customers down. But it's trying to balance that with that they've got enough work, but they've also got the equipment is working properly, the parts are there, that they're coming and everything, and you're checking things as they come along. And it's the same if you've got a production line, exactly the same sort of thing. You've got to meet your customer demand. Like I said, people have got high expectations now. So the more you can effectively manage your scheduling and the customer, you'll keep the increased customer loyalty. Because we're in a world now where actually everybody is moaning about everything. And the more they moan, they're going to say, they're no good, I was on the phone for 5 hours, or blah, 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 blah. If you can go and actually surprise them, they will actually say, actually go there, because they keep me informed. I'm happy with this.
Yeah.
But also with scheduling, if you get the labour right, you hopefully will minimize your overtime costs, because you don't want, if you're paying time and a half, double time, you want to make sure your technicians are obviously working during normal working hours. So
otherwise you're just eating into profits.
You're just eating into profit. So all these things can hit, it's all about time and trying to make sure that people that, as much of your labor is getting, like, you're charging it out as much as possible.
Yeah.
And they're not, sort of got any downtime. And also what they're doing is actually chargeable. So it's not non-chargeable. So it's a balancing act, the whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Graham, I know you've worked with service and maintenance businesses really closely. Can you give it, let's go away from some of the theory a little bit, and let's look at some examples of how you've improved profits in those businesses.
Yeah, and I'm going to give you some, sort of, I know, 2, 3, 4 specific examples. Right. The first one. I used to be, I was like a silent shareholder of a garage. It was a tire business that we turned into like a quick fit business, like, sort of service, repairs, etc. It was a small garage. It was only 1,500 square foot workplace. It only had 2 ramps. Didn't do MOTs. But what I found was that sometimes we get a job in and they were quoting for some large jobs, sort of like maybe an engine rebuild or whatever. But then there was always problems with it. There was problems taking time to, sort of the wrong part, and then they do something else, and then something else went wrong, and so very constrained. And it was about the ramp. Now, what happened that those jobs were taking 2, 3 days, 4 days longer. It was tying up the ramp. So they scheduled this job for, say, 3 days, and it was there all week. The jobs that were scheduled in later, they either had to be put back or they had to be done outside. Now, tires, if it wasn't right, you could get away with it, but not, doing a full service. So what we did, we stopped anything that was a major repair. Anything that was going to take more than a day, we actually outsourced it. We just put a small charge and we did a back-to-back with another garage. Now, that made the best use of the resource. And what it meant was that our profits went up. They ended up going up 5% per month. And that's 5% overall. But it also, actually, we got customer loyalty because we didn't have to keep on stopping, telling them, oh, sorry, we can't do that car. We're going to have to do it another time. So it had a mixture there. And also, the guys, the workforce, didn't like the bigger jobs. They used to get, so you've got to know what your workforce are good at and what they like. So that was one. The there was another one where we had in a sort of like a facilities management type area where they did, sort of like repairs, call outs, servicing, but they also did refurbishment jobs, sort of the project. And what we found is that actually they were quoting for, say, 10 days to do the job, 10 man days, and it was ended up taking 15 to 20. So we said, why is this? Why, are you underpricing? Is it going to take more? No, it shouldn't take that long. And then we found that what was happening, like parts, it was a problem. When they go to site, they were like say control panels, they were not testing everything that went with it. So in the end, what happened, they did a dry run at the warehouse, the workplace. And they actually made sure that they got everything working before they went to site. And that, sort of, instead of, 2 people there for 2 weeks, they took 3 people and they were there 2 or 3 days. And actually the number of man days cut down was, sort of, they cut it down by a third to 50%. And suddenly it became a really lucrative part. They were thinking, do they do this type of work anymore? So that became very lucrative. So again, look at, sort of anything complicated. Don't try and always do the complicated away from your base, because what happened, they could wait for parts at the office because they were doing it, or the workplace, their own workplace, because they were doing it a month before. Another one was looking at call outs. We had a sort of client where they had a client that was 30, 40 miles away, a customer, sorry, and that customer though was isolated. But what happened, they would, the route, when they did the servicing, they would go sort of just make sure the route worked. That was fine, but the call outs didn't. And what was happening, the systems that their customer had was outdated. They wouldn't replace them. And what was happening, they were getting lots of call outs. Now, the client thought, oh, we're paying, we're charging. But actually, when you looked at it, they weren't charging enough. And it was not in an easy location. So it was taking an engineer an hour to get there. They were on site for an hour and then an hour back.
And what was
but they were only charging an hour of time.
So what was
and an hour of the mobilization. So they were losing an hour. But what also was happening, it was disrupting all the other work because they kept on getting call outs. So in the end, on our advice, they dropped that one client. Again, profits went up, and it just helped everything. So you really do have to look at how, you have to look at where your customers are and where your engineers are, or, sort of your technicians. You've got to make sure that things tie up: customer, labor, your own labor, the parts, the equipment, it's where the locations are, and make sure you're pricing each one right. That you don't price all your jobs at the same way. Right.
Absolutely. And I think dealing with those out of area customers is a challenge that needs to be met.
So what we did, and others, we just, if it's a call out, we had you just like in a different area, like sort of you just did circles on the map. And then we had, an extra charge out for call outs for those type of customers if we got any of those. Yes, you may not get them all, but you just don't want call outs. It disrupts everything, disrupts the flow.
Absolutely. So what's your advice to business owners to address these kind of issues, Graham?
Well, I think, good scheduling information is key. So a good scheduling tool, things that, like we use Xero, so things that apps that integrate with Xero, ServiceMate, WorkPal. There are others, or any of your systems, just have something that works. But make sure it's updated, people know. Just try and use this technology to the best of your ability. There's a lot of things there, things can make change, but you've got to get it's basically setting it up right. I think
what I see in my side is making it easy for your team, so your team of engineers who are out there to actually, if you want them to feedback when work's been completed, making it super easy to do that.
Keep it simple, stupid. It is definitely the rule, because people just don't want complicated. Like I alluded to earlier, consider where your customers are based. Look at the planning routes, involve the staff and the actual technicians in the planning routes, because they may say, hang on a minute, that road over there, that's an awful road. I don't want to go there on that sort of time of day. because you don't really, down in the southwest of England, we all know, Fridays is not a best day to travel.
Yeah.
So travel more locally on those days, and maybe Monday mornings, depends where it's coming, where you are.
Yeah.
But look where they're based, and like I said, and also make sure you've got the right parts. If you've got a van going out, make sure it's got all the basic parts there all set up, right, so they can have, so they can deal with those, the little changes, your light bulbs, etc., or whatever it is. Review your pricing. As I said, that you don't price the same way for every type of service, and be careful with hire, bulk work as well. Just see how you're doing that, and is it really making you money? So you really need to cost that, because often it doesn't. It becomes a hospital job. So just think about what really you're making per hour. What is the profit per, or the actual value per hour? As we said, don't focus on turnover, focus on profits and cash. One of the things I see so often is people like, oh, I've got this customer, sort of this trade customer. It's brilliant. Yeah, how much are you actually making? And when you look at it and the hassle it causes, I, again, just been to somewhere and they've stopped one of their trade customers because they were such a hard client, demanded such a low price. When they stopped it, when they said no and they went elsewhere, they actually found, although their volume went down, with trade customers, I mean, it was like 2 jobs a day, and it went down, but they replaced it with 1 retail job.
Yeah.
Surprise, profits went up.
Yeah.
It's really, like, it's not, turnover is vanity, profit, sanity, cash, reality. It's the same thing. Make sure you look at what you're doing, especially in this day and age where, getting good labor is very difficult. So you've got to make sure you price it right. Do not focus on turnover, and just be careful with price wars and things like that, because often, you get drawn down into, providing a rubbish service. You want to, like I said, if you're giving your customer a good service and you're communicating with them and keeping them going, they will pay a bit more. People will pay more. And also the other thing I was going to say is that I've seen it with, if you pair up people, like if you've got like scaffolding, got a gang, or, sort of like technicians going in, there's a 2-handed job, make sure the people get on. Otherwise you'll get, and everybody moaning about the other, and you'll spend all your time doing that. Please just make sure that the dynamics of the team are right. Don't think they just live close to by, so they work together. Just watch that. People don't always, they don't always get on well. So pair them up, pair out the right ones,
Yeah, that makes sense. So if people are joining us today, want to have a one-to-one with you, Graham, if these issues are affecting their business, they can pop an email over to chatwithgraham@wessex.commercial.com, and we'll set up a free meeting for them. And next time we are going to turn the tables a little bit. Graham's going to be asking the questions and I'm going to be answering them, and be put on the spot. Looking forward to it. And we're going to be talking about how small businesses can achieve ISO 9001. So I'm really looking forward to that. So join us on Monday, the 3rd of July at 12:30 in the afternoon. So look forward to seeing you then. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thank you.
Bye.